Hi everybody, welcome back to More Fluent English. In this video, I'm talking about podcast episode 49, What You Do When You Don't Feel Well. I will read through some of the transcript and stop and show you other things as well. And for this episode, I have some external videos that I'm going to show you. So let me share my screen. Okay. This is the transcript for episode 49. You can get this on my website, morefluentenglish.com. I'll start with the English and read through and pause to explain some things as we go. So it says, "Hi friend, today's episode is part of a series of podcasts from my self-assessment workbook called 30 Topics to Gauge Your Fluency and Practice Your Use of English in Conversation. This is a great resource to get you to think about what topics you can really communicate about in English. You can download the workbook for free at my website, morefluentenglish.com. Each of the topics in the workbook is or will be its own podcast episode. And some of those are also videos that you'll find on the channel as well. So you can go back and watch some of those. This is topic 26 that asks, what do you do when you're not feeling well? Different folks will have different answers to this question, but I'll narrow it down to some of the most common reactions of people when they feel a bit under the weather. So you see some words are underlined. That means that they have definitions on the right that all come from wordreference.com, a great resource. Folks, for example, is just an informal way to say people. Okay, and I talked about feeling under the weather. Of course, under the weather means that you're not feeling well. Usually if someone says, I'm feeling a little under the weather, it means that they don't feel their best, but they can still function. They'll most likely go to work and get through their day, probably with some cold medicine. But let's back up and talk about what not feeling well can mean. You might wake up in the morning and just not feel right. You might have a headache, or your throat might hurt, or you can say you have a sore throat. Maybe your nose is stuffed up, or your sinuses are congested. That's really the same thing. You might have a cough, and something I didn't talk about, you might have a fever also. Maybe your ears hurt. You know, a lot of these are just kind of signs of infection or a cold. So what do you do? If your symptoms aren't severe, or if you suspect you just have a cold, you would probably take some medicine and go on with your day. What kind of medicine do we take in the US and where do we get it? Well, I would guess that most people have in their homes Tylenol or a generic form of it. Tylenol is a brand of acetaminophen. It's used mostly for headaches or body aches, also fevers as well. Another common medicine people probably have is ibuprofen. A common brand of that is called Advil. Again, people take it for aches and pains and fevers. It's really an anti-inflammatory, I think. Many people probably also have other kinds of cold medicines in their house. I know we do. We have some. Of course, this medicine won't cure a cold, but it helps relieve the symptoms. In our cabinet, we have some pills for nasal congestion, runny nose, and sinus pressure. I think we have some liquid cough medicine also. In the video, which you're watching right now, I'll show you what we have in our medicine cabinet. Let's go take a look. This is where we keep our medicine, in this bag and in this cabinet. So here we have some pain reliever. It's really acetaminophen, like a generic Tylenol. We have some ibuprofen. That's children's ibuprofen, so it's chewable, so they don't have to swallow it. And more children's acetaminophen, again, chewable. Here's something for sinus congestion. It's a decongestant. So if your nose is stuffy, regular ibuprofen, which is like the generic Advil that I talked about. Here's some liquid. It says daytime cold and flu. So you see one of the main ingredients is the acetaminophen, and it says daytime because it's non-drowsy. And we also have this cold medicine. It says severe cold. So when you're really not feeling well. And this is a nighttime formula. So you take this at night because it will make you drowsy, make you sleepy. There are 2 tablets in there that you dissolve in water. And we have these cold pills. You have daytime and nighttime. So the daytime is non-drowsy and the nighttime will make you sleepy, but they're both for cold and flu relief. So where did I get these medications? In the US, this type of medicine is called over the counter, meaning you don't need a prescription to buy it. You just self diagnose your symptoms and buy the medicine you think will help. You can get them at a grocery store, a drugstore, or sometimes even a gas station. A drugstore sells things like toiletries, makeup, shampoo, toothpaste, also greeting cards, magazines, candy, and it has over the counter medicine and a pharmacy like inside of it. So if you go to the doctor and they prescribe you medication, you have to go to the pharmacy to get it. A lot of pharmacies here are located within other stores. Um, we'll I'll show you that right now. Let's look at the video inside of a chain drugstore that we have in the US, in some areas of the US, called CVS. There are a lot of um, different stores, different kinds of drugstores. CVS is just one chain. Uh, let's take a look. Okay, so this is the drugstore that you can get shampoo, deodorant, toothpaste. They even have some drinks in the coolers. They have some stuff for like laundry, candy. We'll go down to find where the medicines are. You can get also, I'll go this way, makeup. They have greeting cards. You can buy gift cards here. An aisle of school supplies, diapers and stuff, baby stuff. And then you start getting into the medicines. Here they have, for example, it says external pain, first aid, personal intimacy. So, they have band-aids, well, bandages, things for cuts and bruises, things like that. And then here you have stuff for colds and pain relief, like the Tylenol and the Advil that I had mentioned before, and things for if you have a cold. And they have a special section for medicines for children, because you don't want to give them the same strength medication that you give to an adult. And they also have a pharmacy, and that's where you can go to pick up medications that the doctor prescribes for you. And so that's it. They have an aisle of things for the house, toilet paper, cleaners, and then they have some vitamins and a small section of food. So that's it. That's the drugstore. Okay, so that was inside the drugstore, and then seeing the pharmacy leads me to talking about the doctor's office, because you'll only go to the pharmacy if a doctor has prescribed you medication. Or if you have a question about an over-the-counter medication, you can talk to the pharmacist. They'll help you also. They'll answer your questions. But if your symptoms are severe or you're not getting better in a few days, you might want to see a doctor. If you have insurance, you probably have a primary care doctor that you can call to make an appointment. If you're sick, they'll try to see you that day or the next, usually. We also have places called urgent care that will see you that day. If you don't have insurance, you might have to go to the emergency room at a hospital, but that costs a lot of money. Currently in the US, you don't have to have health insurance. For a time, it was mandatory. It was illegal if you didn't have health insurance. It's no longer illegal, but it is highly recommended. I talked about going to the doctor in another episode. It was number 28. So you can listen to that if you're interested. And in that episode, I also told the story of having to take my son to the emergency room. And so this is podcast 28. So I'll link to it in the description of this video. Back to the current podcast. All right. Anyway, if you're like me, when you don't feel well, all you want to do is lie in bed and rest. And let me stop right here and review that last sentence right here. Because I know a lot of native speakers get it wrong. So I want you to be aware of it if you hear it. The first part, when you don't feel well. Okay. But people will say when you don't feel good. Or someone will say, I don't feel good today. Technically, well should be used to talk about your physical health, and good refers to your emotional well-being. But in standard spoken American English, either one is understood when describing how you're feeling. The second part, though, right here, this is what gives people trouble, especially or even really native speakers, because it's the difference between the verbs lie and lay. And so people often question, do you say to lie down or to lay down? Okay, well, basically, lay means to place an object down in a horizontal position, whereas lie means to place yourself down in a horizontal position. Lay is transitive, meaning it requires a direct object, but lie is intransitive. You don't have to know what those things mean, but if you have studied grammar, that might help you. So for example, you can lay your coat on the couch, but you lie or lie down on the couch. You can lay the baby on the bed, but you lie on the bed next to the baby. Grammarly.com has a really good explanation of these verbs. I'll link to it in the description, but this is it right here. It tells you what the difference is. It gives some examples, when to use lay, how to use lie, how to remember the differences. And then it also talks about other forms of the verb, not just those present tense, which is really confusing for people. So that's a really good resource. You can check that out after this video. Okay, back to the transcript. And as I was saying, if I don't feel well, I like to just lie in bed and rest. Sometimes I'll lie on the couch and watch TV. Usually when I'm sick, which fortunately isn't often, for some reason, I crave fried chicken. So I'll ask my husband to go get me a chicken sandwich or some chicken fingers from one of the fast food restaurants near here. People often recommend eating chicken soup, especially if you have a cold, but it's not my favorite. I do try to keep up my water intake when I'm sick because it's important to stay hydrated, even if you're not eating much. And what's funny is that if my kids are sick, I'll make them homemade chicken soup. I don't know. I've never been a big fan. I'll eat it if I have to, but it's not my first thing to go to. So what do you do when you're not feeling well? I hope you have friends or loved ones that can help take care of you. If I talked about anything in this episode that you didn't understand, just leave a comment here below and I will try to answer the best I can. You also can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook as More Fluent English and Instagram as more_fluent_English. Or you can always go to the website, morefluentenglish.com, and send me a message from there in the contact section. And all the fluency topics for this podcast series are on the website as well. You can download that workbook. So if you enjoyed this video and it helped you understand a little bit or practice understanding, like it and definitely subscribe so you can be notified when more videos come out. And that is it for now. Thanks for being here and watching, and I'll see you soon. Adios.